When most people think of air layering, they're thinking about propagation. However, air layering isn't just for making more plants. It can also be used to enhance Nebari or to select where roots will grow. There are many ways to do this. So today I want to talk about a few methods you can try and some things to consider so you can get started on your own journey with air layering. Before we dive into the different methods, let's take a step back and look at what air layering actually is. Air layering is simply the process of encouraging roots to grow while the branch is still attached to the parent tree. This allows us to propagate a tree and make a new plant without the need to graft. But air layering is much more than that. It is also a way to force roots to grow where we want them to grow, and it is especially helpful in the early stages when we are looking to establish strong branching. One of the main reasons why air layering is so useful is that you can often achieve faster results than with other propagation techniques like cuttings. And the bonus is that you don't have to find a compatible rootstock, and you don't have to worry about graft failure. All that said, there are still some downsides to consider. Air layering is somewhat labor intensive and it requires patience because it may take longer to see results. If conditions aren't optimal, you might end up with rotting branches and wasted time. In addition, even if done correctly, there's still an element of chance involved, and sometimes the plant just won't root. That said, if you give it enough tries, you'll eventually get the hang of it, and air layering can be an extremely powerful tool in any bonsai enthusiast's arsenal. So let's talk about a few methods you can use for air layering. The first method I want to discuss is the tourniquet method. This approach is less invasive and it produces slower results. With the tourniquet method, you're basically creating a dam that stops water from flowing down the branch. This creates a bulge of moisture near the top of the branch, which encourages roots to emerge above the blockage. To perform the air layer, start by wrapping copper wire around the branch. Leave some space between the wire wraps so you can slide the wire up and down. This will allow you to adjust the tightness of the wrap as needed. Make sure that you wrap the area above where you want the roots to emerge. Also, keep in mind that the thicker the branch, the more likely it is that roots will emerge below the tourniquet. Once the wire is in place, apply rooting hormone to the area just above the wire. Next, stuff some sphagnum moss over the cut end of the wire and secure everything with plastic wrap. Place your tree in an area that will receive bright indirect light. Check the progress every couple of days and mist the moss if it begins to dry out. As the tree grows new leaves, you'll know that the tourniquet is working. Keep the tree well hydrated, but not soggy, and be patient. Depending on your environment and tree species, it could take anywhere from 3 weeks to several months to see results. When roots emerge, gently break off a rooted branch and admire your work. Now remember to mist the cut surface with water to prevent excessive water loss. Then replant and keep the soil moist until it's well established. Another method you can try is called the ring method. This approach is more aggressive and it produces faster results. However, there is a higher risk of damaging the tree and killing it. As you might guess from the name, the ring method involves making a ring or multiple rings through the bark of the tree. Start by disinfecting your blade or pruners. Then, using a straight edge as a guide, make 2 parallel cuts through the bark. Take your time and try to make smooth, angled cuts. Angle the blade slightly upward so that the bottom edge of the cut is slightly lower than the top edge. The goal is to remove a strip of bark along with some of the outer phloem tissue. Remove the bark strip and apply rooting hormone to both the top and bottom surfaces. The size of the wound will quickly begin to callus over and seal the wound. However, we want to keep the wound open so the tree can continue growing roots. To keep the wound open, stuff sphagnum moss into the wound. Secure the moss with plastic wrap and place your tree in an area that will receive bright and direct light. Again, check the progress every couple of days and mist the moss if it begins to dry out. As the tree grows new leaves, you'll know that the air layer is working. Keep the tree well hydrated, but not soggy, and be patient. Depending on your environment and tree species, it could take anywhere from 3 weeks to several months to see results. When roots emerge, gently break off a rooted branch and admire your work. Now remember to mist the cut surface with water to prevent excessive water loss. Then replant and keep the soil moist until it's well established. Now you should have a good idea of the general workflow involved in air layering, but there are still some important details I want to go over. For example, how do you decide where to air layer? A good rule of thumb is to choose a branch that's not too old. In general, it's best to air layer in the spring when the tree is actively growing. However, you may be able to air layer during the summer depending on the climate and species. Just avoid air layering in the fall when trees are preparing to go dormant. Regardless of the season, always choose a branch that's not too old. The younger the branch, the easier it will be to propagate. You should also choose a branch that has good bud or leaf flushes. Healthy trees will always have new growth. And even though you may lose that new growth during the air layering process, it's a good sign that the tree is overall healthy and vigorous. If possible, avoid air layering diseased or pest-infested branches. Even though you can treat affected areas, it's generally better to choose a different branch. Another thing you can consider is the location of the air layer. If you want to encourage vertical growth, then air layer at the top of the branch. If you want to encourage horizontal growth, then air layer at the bottom of the branch. Once you've finished air layering, what should you do next? The answer depends on your goals. If you propagated the plant for the sole purpose of having another bonsai, then you can simply admire your work. On the other hand, if you air layered to improve Nebari, then you'll need to deal with the exposed roots. Whenever you see exposed roots, you should bury them. Even if you air layered to produce aerial roots, it's best to keep the new Nebari just below soil level. Keeping the Nebari buried will help the roots thicken over time. Once they're thick enough, you can expose them in a future repotting cycle. If you're doing this to develop gin or deadwood, you can leave the roots exposed. But even in this case, I recommend keeping the Nebari just below soil level and allowing the roots to thicken. By taking these steps, you'll ensure that your tree has a strong Nebari that will support it throughout its life. Another question that comes up is what kind of soil should you use when planting your newly air-layered branch? The answer is it doesn't really matter as long as it's well draining. I typically use a mix of pumice and lava rock, but you can use whatever you prefer. Just make sure it's well draining because waterlogged soil will suffocate the roots and kill the plant. As you can probably tell, there's a lot that goes into air layering. It takes practice to get the timing down and to develop the right touch. Just remember to choose a healthy tree, use sharp tools, disinfect the tools, remove the bark with the phloem, apply rooting hormone, keep the wound open and seal the wound. The rest is up to Mother Nature. The most important thing to remember is to be patient and enjoy the process. Air layering can be a rewarding experience, and the results are well worth the effort. With a little practice, you'll be air layering like a pro in no time. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video and learned something new. Please feel free to leave comments and questions down below. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you all next time.